Good evening, everyone. Well, that got their attention. Hi. Wanted to call to order the Budget Committee meeting for Roseburg Public Schools, the first meeting for the 2023-24 budget, and start with the flag salute. Cheryl, if you'd lead us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to also ask for when the committee members speak, if you would push the little button in front of you and it'll turn green, because we're being recorded and it helps with the official record, and then turn it off if you would like, in case you make a comment under your breath or whisper to the neighbor and you don't want that in the record. In any case, just a reminder, if you would try to do that, it's really helpful. And then with that, I'd like to have us introduce ourselves. We do have some new budget committee members, and maybe we could start down there just with
Bailey Adams.
You're gonna,
Sorry, I gotta say some what?
I like the youngest member on the committee.
yeah, that's a good one.
Graduated from Roseburg in 2015, so that's
And his favorite teacher was.
Rachel Jackson.
Thank you. I'm Mickey Hall. I'm excited to be here. To see all my friends.
Yeah,
I graduated. I graduated. That's all we need to know.
Steve Hammerson. I've been in Roseburg for 2.5 years now. I have a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, 14-year-old. Also excited to be here.
Tom Nelson, 1970, graduated Roseburg High School, and newly retired as of about March 31st, a couple weeks ago. So living a new chapter in my life.
Rod Cotton, 1975, graduate of Roseburg High School. Go Ducks. I know. I also wanted to say this afternoon, because anytime I get a chance to talk about good things, several of us in this room got to recognize employees for 5 years of service, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. 30, and that was a lot of fun. We have some really awesome staff members, teachers and classified folks in our district. I'm glad to be here too.
I'm Charles Lee. I'm a board member. I had kids in Roseburg schools from 1984 to 2002, but otherwise I'm a stranger come here in 1975.
I kind of like Mickey's. I graduated from somewhere, right? I have lived in Roseburg a long time, but my 3 children graduated from Roseburg Public Schools, and it has been instrumental in their success and careers. So I'm proud of that and proud of our schools. And that's it.
I'm Reverend Howard Johnson, and I got 5 great grandkids in the school system.
Becca Larson, school board member. I have 2 that graduated and a 3rd that's about to graduate from Roseburg High School, and a freshman and a 3rd grader. So I just try to keep the schools busy.
Michelle Nee, Assistant Superintendent for Roseburg Public Schools. I've been here in Roseburg for 5 years. I'm in March today. But my husband is from here. Melrose, Jolene, and RHS. We're part of the community, and I currently have 3 grandchildren going to Roseburg Public Schools and another 5 that will be headed that direction.
Good evening, Jared Gordon, Superintendent, Roseburg Public Schools. A pleasure to have everybody here. And I'm a father of 4. And our kids have had the privilege, except for our oldest, we moved out in 2019 to my second daughter graduate from Roseburg High School. And I have another one graduating this year, and Tate is moving on from middle school to high school. And we're thrilled to be here and really appreciate the opportunity to serve in this community.
Brandon Bishop, school board member. I have 4 kids, and one has graduated from Roseburg High School. Another will graduate this year. And the other 2 are in right now, junior high moving to high school, and then elementary moving to middle school. Excuse me, middle school moving to high school, then elementary moving to middle school. And I'm very happy to be here. I love budget meetings.
And also the mama of 2 Roseburg High School graduates, very proud about that, who went on to be college graduates. Job well done.
Tiffany Farrington, I work in the business office.
Tiffany had 3 kids go through the Roseburg School District to graduate from Roseburg High.
Danielle Littlefield, I'm the budget and accounting manager. And I have 3 boys, 2 have graduated at Roseburg High School and 1 is set to graduate next year.
I'm Robert Freeman. I'm the Director of Human Resources, and I've been in this position for 8 years now.
I am Jill Weber. I'm currently the principal at Roseburg High School and soon to be Director of Teaching and Learning. I have been in the district 33 years as an educator, graduated Roseburg High School. I have 3 children who have graduated from Roseburg High School, a son who's a teacher. I could go on and on, but that's probably enough. So.
Yeah. Yes.
I would know.
Second that motion.
I'll nominate Tom Nelson as vice chair.
Motion is second for Tom Nelson. Any other nominations? No. Right? All those in favor of Tom for vice chairman, please say aye.
Aye.
Ready for the budget message,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Superintendent.
Thank you very much. Chair Kubik, this budget message has been emailed to you. You may not have a chance to see it. I apologize. It's not in your current packet. I don't believe it was. Is it in there? Oh, it is in there. Thank you very much, Tiffany and Cheryl. I'm not going to read the message, but I thought I would just do an overview of the message. And one of the main purposes tonight is to receive a budget message for the budget committee. And I'm happy to do that tonight. And I would just say it's really a privilege and an honor to present this budget to you tonight. And I want to start by thanking you for your commitment as board members and community members to be here. Also want to thank our business office for the time they've spent in preparing this budget. I have an up on the screen and in your binder there, a copy of our district strategic plan. And this document has been developed and shepherded by our school board. And this budget reflects the expectations and vision of the board to ensure that all students have the care, support, and instruction they need to graduate with a plan for a successful future. And what I want to present tonight is the framework that this budget is a reflection of the expectations the board has, also our strategic initiatives around appropriate and timely instruction, safe and inclusive environment, leadership development, and effective operations. Anytime I get a chance to talk to whether it's board members or community members, it always thrills me to talk about how amazing our kids are. Director Cotton talked tonight. We have amazing staff who care deeply about our kids. And we have incredible kids who are doing incredible things. And this budget is grounded in the expectation that the kids receive what they need to be successful. We're not always preparing kids for the world we grew up in, but preparing them for the world that they need to be successful in. And these key tenets in our strategic plan have really driven this budget. I do have on page 3 for you a few items that are worth mentioning, and I'll just call these out. I'm not meant to do a roll call. They are also in the budget document, but sometimes in the many pages in the budget document, they're maybe harder to, so I don't think they're highlighted, but I did want to just highlight a few of the investments we have made specifically to supporting our kids and supporting their futures. These are categorized by our key investments in our budget, or excuse me, in our strategic plan. And so you'll hear tonight about our emerging kindergarten classroom. We have 4 STEAM teachers, if you're not aware. If you haven't seen the STEAM team van running around, it visits every elementary school. They're in elementary school every day doing lessons around science, technology, engineering, and math. We did that to ensure that the experience around high quality STEM education is not determined on your zip code or on your parents' understanding of engineering design. We've added, we have full-time elementary, middle, and music teachers to have an articulated vertical there. We've added within this budget 2 elementary teachers. We've added to our classroom libraries. We're supporting FTE within our students that receive additional support through our special education services. We are really trying to attack class size, enhancing our after-school opportunities for all students, and supporting all levels, middle and high school and elementary, with a variety of services. We've invested in school psychologists, skills trainers, additional nurses, and looked at ways we can offset costs for students that are a barrier to entry. We've had more students participate in athletics and activities than ever before that we ever have on record. Students are taking advantage of the low barrier to entry to be involved, not just in the classroom, but also in other activities, ancillary activities. Jill talked tonight. We have invested in a director of teaching and learning, which is an important investment for us to ensure that we have the coaching and instructional frameworks we need. And we also, in terms of effective operations, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight, have invested in ensuring that we are good stewards of our facilities long-term. We've invested in the field fund, and we are currently in the process of working through conditional use permit to move forward on a softball for our girls softball program. I do think it's also important to just mention, we are working this budget. So there's a process, a legislative process. We're in the long session. We're about 2 weeks past the midpoint session of the long session right now at the legislature. There's always uncertainty this time of the year at the beginning of a biennium. This current biennium for the 21-23 year was 9.3 billion. The number we've been working off is 9.9 billion on the biennium. That's been proposed by the governor's office. I expect that number to bounce around a little bit, but for the purpose of this document, we have built this budget on the $9.9 billion biennium. I'll just mention, almost in closing here, that one thing that I can't overstate is thanking our board and business office, for that matter, to move forward on the sale of the pension obligation bonds in 2020, 2021. That investment, that not risk, but the calculated decision to move forward on the sale of PERS pension obligation bonds has yielded about a $4 million savings in the upcoming year, in the not in the biennium, but in the 23-24 year. And I appreciate the board and our business office and the decision to do that. That is yielding some savings for us. Again, I would just reiterate that the budget presented to you does align to our strategic plan. It has been a anchor document for us and is centered on our belief that all kids can be successful when they have the support they need. Our kids are our North Star. And hopefully this budget is, we go through this, you'll find areas in which that's reflected. And again, I propose to you and offer you this proposed balanced budget for the 23-24 school year. Thank you.
Yeah, they do. Great, and all of you have a copy of my presentation at your spot. Thank you, Cheryl. As Cheryl shared with you, I manage all of our major grants for the district. So this is an overview of our major grants. Just to give you a summary of those programs, we have our high school success grant. That's to improve graduation rates and college and career readiness. We have a student investment account, and that is to meet students' needs, mental health, behavioral needs, increase academic achievement, and reduce disparities for student focal groups. We have our career and technical education, our Perkins grant. That is to improve access and participation in education and training programs that prepare students for high wage, high skill, and demand careers. There it goes. And then we have our title grant. I won't read you word for word the definitions of each of those grants, but I will give you an overview. Title I, Title II, and Title IV are federal funds that we receive. Our Title I-A is to provide children significant opportunity to receive a fair, equitable, and high-quality education. We currently have 6 Title I elementary schools and 2 Title I middle schools. I'll explain a little bit more about that further in the presentation. Title IIA funding goes to state educational agencies to increase student academic achievement and provide high quality professional development and support for our teachers, our instructional assistants, and our administrators. And then Title IV is to increase the capacity of schools to provide students with a well-rounded education. Mr. Freeman, are you trying to join the Zoom meeting? No, I'll share. Oh, yeah, okay. I can add you. Sorry, you're popping in this. Okay, so I just wanted to give you you need to move your computer. Robert, you need to move your computer. I wanted to share with you, we had to provide an integrated guidance application to the state this year that combined all of the grants, not the title grants, but the high school success, the SIA, and the Perkins grants. Those are all put together. So we have to put together a plan and a needs assessment. I know I've shared this with our school board, but I wanted to give a quick overview to the budget committee as well. And we have to identify what our needs assessment brings forward, and these are our high priority needs as a district. So improve students' mental and behavioral health, improve literacy outcomes, improve student achievement, build aligned CTE STEM pathways, and more access to high quality professional learning and collaboration for teachers and staff. And you will see these needs woven through the things that we have invested in as a district through our grants. And these are our intended outcomes: increase our graduation rate for all students to 90%, with the largest percentage of growth in our underserved populations. Our highest underserved population in our district are students with poverty. A comprehensive system to support social emotional needs for students and adults, for positive school climate and learning conditions, typical or higher growth in reading and math, reduce student discipline incidents, and improve school climate. And then the focus on access and retention of students in our CTE, our STEM programs, our AP classes, and our college credit courses and programs that we have in our district. Give you a quick overview. Right now we have preliminary budget projections. We will receive the final ones later before the school year starts. This is our SIA investment. Our preliminary projection is almost $4.2 million. Some of the things that we are investing in, as Superintendent Corden shared, are special education teachers and instructional assistants, and skills trainers in all of our elementary schools and our middle schools, our STEAM team, and the supplies and materials to support that STEAM team, our PK-12 social emotional learning coordinator, who is Mindy Endicott. We have eliminated all fees for students. That is fees for them to participate in classes. This is fees for them to participate in athletics or any extracurricular activity. So this helps provide access for all of our students. And then we've added additional teachers to reduce class sizes.
That a trend now in a lot of school districts to eliminate fees on most, or are we special and unique in that?
It has become, I don't know if the word is a trend. We're not alone in that, but we are, many school districts have not made that commitment. So
this is our third year of eliminating fees. So,
Yeah, and obviously that's why we've seen an increase.
yes.
And that's the full meal deal. Thank you.
I think we should add though, and it is, I'm glad we have been able to do it. It still costing parents and kids still to participate in athletics. They're still having to buy.
Yeah.
So these are fees, these are fees that fixed fees, yeah.
And we do, like for bands, for instance, we pay for the uniforms, we pay for the shoe rentals, like the students are having to pay for those classes. And we've also been purchasing the instruments and things to support our residents. Of course. Mhm. Yeah. Those are state grants. Yes. That's okay. No problem. That's what I'm here for. High school success is also called Measure 98. Our preliminary budget for next school year is 1.4 million. And some of the things that we are investing in are 2 graduation coaches. We have had 1 graduation coach at the high school, but next year we will have 2 graduation coaches. They work with our students to help ensure that they are on track for graduation. We also have our 9th and 10th grade smaller learning communities. Yes.
Certified positions. They work alongside the counselors, but they are not in the counseling office counseling. So they'll work kind of liaison between teachers and students. They teach a class that builds skills and knowing how to navigate through a school. They do tutoring sessions. So it's that extra support that they need beyond just a regular counselor.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
We also have our 9th and 10th grade smaller learning communities. In the past, we had the 9th grade smaller learning communities. We have expanded to the 10th grade smaller learning communities. And this is where our 9th grade students have a core set of teachers to support them, and they stay with those teachers. It just wraps them up and provides them support as they move through high school, especially with coming in from middle school. They need that extra support. But we also have found, especially after our 3 years of the pandemic, that our 10th grade students have needed the extra support as well. We also use these funds for CTE teachers, CTE equipment, supplies, and curriculum. High school summer school courses, our college dual credit and AP courses, and we do pay for additional high school counselors as well. We've expanded the number of counselors. We now have 5. Our Perkins CTE investment, we are one of the few districts in the state that are not part of a consortium for Perkins. We are direct recipients of Perkins grant, which does give us more flexibility on how we use the funds. The Perkins grant is focused on career and technical education. Our preliminary budget for next year is almost $81,000. And this fund is used for equipment, supplies, training, professional learning, and curriculum to support hospitality, tourism and recreation, culinary arts, early childhood education, construction, cabinetry, drafting, engineering, agriculture, welding, manufacturing, automotive, and office systems business. We have lots of programs for our students in high school. Really quick with Title 1A, next year, our preliminary budget is over 2.1 million. This is almost a $500,000 increase from this past year. We are still in the planning stages on how to use that additional 500,000. But these are what we currently are investing in. Our Title I schools are listed there for you. And we have learning specialists at our 6 Title I elementary schools and our 2 middle schools, instructional assistants. We pay for a pre-K classroom at Green Elementary, the staff. We have homeless liaison. We pay for parent-family involvement. And we also have our teaching and learning support specialists that are at our Title I schools as well. Title IIA, we have a little over almost 270,000 in our preliminary budget. They are also used to fund our teaching and learning support specialists. We cannot use Title I funds to fund positions at non-Title I schools. So because we have Hugh Crest and Melrose are not Title I schools, we use our Title II funds to pay for the teaching and learning support specialists in those buildings. We pay for mentoring and professional learning for our staff. And then there's Title 4A, which is a preliminary budget of almost 125,000. And those investments are also for professional learning. It's our suicide prevention intervention professional learning. We are required as a district to have a suicide prevention intervention plan. And we are providing training to all of our staff. This is the first year of the required training. So all of our staff have been trained in PPR, which is a suicide prevention and intervention program. And then we are also providing coaching, leadership coaching to our administrators. I just threw a lot of stuff at you, but if there are any questions or comments that I can do, yes. Benefits being Title I school. We get additional, so the purpose of Title I is to provide additional funds to our schools that have high poverty numbers. So for instance, for Grove Elementary, 75% of the students there are poverty students. So the Title I funds give us the opportunity to provide more support to those schools. So for instance, the learning specialists that are at the title schools provide interventions and supports for our the lowest performing students that need the most assistance. Plus, we also pay for Title I assistance at those buildings as well. To provide extra funds to support those buildings to help our highest needs students. Great. We are not, it's interesting, our numbers as we roll up get smaller at the high school. So currently the high school is one of the lower ones as far as their percentages. Press and Melrose and the high school are not currently there. If we identify the high school as Title I, which is, we're having those conversations because we have that additional funding. We have to have the funding. So what it's been in the past is the funding we had, we would have to take something away from our other title schools in order to give something to our non-title schools. So with the addition of that new funding, we are looking at how we can spread that out. And if we cannot identify Preston and Melrose right now, because you have to at least be at 40% free and reduced lunch in order to be identified as a full Title I school. Crest is around 33% and Melrose is at 28% the last time we were data. High school last check was 54%. How often is that? So it's been, Cheryl can probably help talk with this as well. In the past, pre-COVID, every year they collected the free and reduced lunch applications that came in. And then we had COVID happen, and Cheryl, you probably can say this more eloquently than I can, but we went to, we were able to provide free and reduced lunches free lunches to all of our students in the entire district. So we're not collecting those forms anymore at this point. So it's been more difficult to get that information. I do believe that they are going to start looking at SNAP benefits for this next year. So they'll look at the students who are enrolled in SNAP benefits to give us a more accurate picture of where we are with our Title I students.
No, it was, yeah, my experience in the past working with various schools is that it's really hard to get an accurate count because, especially once you get to high school, because it's embarrassing to bring in a form that says my family needs help. And so it's really hard to get that accurate information. And so I do like that they are going to start looking at SNAP benefits because it's all self-reported. So if the kids don't self-report that, then we don't get that funding.
And that has been the nice part, that we've been able to provide meals to all of our students. We don't have that stigma anymore. That I know I remember when I was a principal previously, kiddos had lunch cards, if they were getting free lunch. There was ways to identify that students were getting free as much as you tried not to. So that stigma's been taken away. But now we have to we're working on a better way to identify our number of students so we can accurately serve.
Clarify what you're talking about is we went on the community eligibility provision
Thank you. I
that
couldn't
says
find
we have
the
it says we have a base year. And so now we serve all of our students for free. And of the meals that we serve, we get reimbursed, we get the federal reimbursement on the same percentages as the base year. So if a school had 70% free, 10% reduced and the rest paid, we get 70% of the federal reimbursement. And we just use a clicker now. So kids don't have to, stop and input their number, and, it's really speeds up the lunch line. We do receive information, they call it direct certification from the Department of Education on SNAP benefits and other benefits such as that. So we do have that data.
And that's changed just.
That will change in the near future, or do you think that there's any talk with that from the state or federal Department of Education about changing how often they reassess these things, or they're going to keep doing free reduced or free lunch for everybody?
They are having different conversations about universal free meals for everyone. I would think that the state would then try to fund, and they do to some extent now, the difference between the reduced price meal, federal reimbursement, and the free reimbursement. So they do fund us for that difference right there, but they're talking all free meals.
But you don't think they're going to scale back, and you haven't seen anything over there scale back to the way it was then, is what you're saying?
Well, we're staying on the community eligibility provisions, so we will continue to provide all free meals for our students, both breakfast and lunch. It's just a matter of balancing the reimbursement.
Yeah. Interesting.
My other question concerns the graduation coaches. My assumption is that you're having two graduation coaches now because the one graduation coach for several years has been successful. My question is, will those, since you're adding an extra graduation coach, and this may already be taken care of, are you going to contact 8th graders as well as just 9th graders? Because I know that a lot of kids are lost in the 9th grade, the first semester often, that if that connection is made with them when they're in the 8th grade and stays through the summer, and then as a 9th grader, is that in the plans or?
And it's part of our SIA funds. You can see that we have our summer programs, and that provide, and also with our high school success. So with the high school, they do the high school transition classes. So those are for our incoming 8th graders. So they're able to attend those classes in the summer to get that support and need to move into the high school. And then we do go down and support our 8th graders as well.
I would just say, I would just acknowledge that graduation is not a high school process. It is a process that even starts before kids come to us, but it has to be articulated. Our investments are, although they may appear to be siloed, the design is to support children. And so the addition will be a benefit to both our, certainly our high school, it'll double some things that also be articulated.
Programs get audited and reviewed by reports we make to the federal government, right?
We make those reports to the state. We're actually in monitoring year this year. So we meet with the state and provide all of our documentation, and they provide that to the federal.
So we don't have to deal with separate teams of overseers.
Just ODE. It's one team from ODE. Yes.
Okay.
I have their our final monitoring meeting is on Friday.
And we also, as part of our major program, our auditor also pick it up. And they go to every single year.
But I think Director, to be clear, each of these major funds have its own oversight group. So Measure 98, for example, is a different title. We do meet the process to go through Measure 98, running a team, looking at the investment, return on investment. So relative to we're not dealing with federal government take up on title.
And for each of the grants, high school success, as in SIA and Perkins, I have to do quarterly reports that we turn in to the state to audit what we are working on.
Those state grants are funds that the legislature decided that instead of sending out to schools as general student support, they send it out, they take that money out of the general school support and put it in these programs.
Not inaccurate, actually. Yeah. I mean, grant funds have there's expectations with the dollars, right? So when grant funds come in, the grant ODE essentially, who is the one who oversees the federal and state grants, will come in and say, in order to get these dollars, you will need to show outcomes on these things. So our goal is to say, so it's interesting, right? Because we have a strategic plan, and not those two things don't align. But part of the sausage making, if you will, is to make sure that we can use those grants to benefit our strategic mission to the district. But grants are, I think, designed to make sure the grantee gets what they're looking for. And there's an expectation with those grants that they yield the results for the grant. So there is a little bit of a dance. I also just want to mention, just for the groups, for clarity's sake, relative to Title I funds, there is a reality that, and this sounds bad, it's not intended to sound bad, but there are buildings that don't receive funds but have students who qualify that are experiencing poverty. And so there is an element in the Title I world where certain students or buildings subsidize other buildings for support. So that's a reality with those funds, and they're not perfect, but when you look at a school that might have 30% of their students, 1 out of 3, you think about a table group of 6, and 2 of those students are experiencing poverty, but don't receive maybe the funding to do that. We've been creative on you can't supplant, but you have to be creative on how to support it. But I will say this just for clarity's sake, and that is that we've had people ask before, then why don't you just qualify all schools? Well, the idea of certain schools essentially subsidizing other schools is we don't receive more money because we qualify more schools. It's the same amount of money. District-wide, students experiencing poverty is the fund that comes to us. And so it's a balance in terms of looking at our strategic plan, our goals around making sure kids are at level at 3rd grade. And so it's a tricky thing, but I think it's hard for people to be like, well, if you qualify that, you should get more money. The dollars that come in are for all students, pre-K through 12. And so it is a balance to figure out what the right application of that is. But just for everybody's sake, if we were to qualify a school, we're receiving all the title funds for all students in the district. But certain buildings qualify for these. Well, I'm happy to answer this. I mean, we have our extended school year, and Melissa heads that program up, and that's a different batch of funding that we're able to provide. The part of what we're in this biennium world of trying to figure out funding right now is the last 2 years, we've really benefited from funding that's come from the state to support our summer programs. And I've shared with the board quite a bit of data around the credits earned and students that have benefited from those programs. At this point, the state currently hasn't decided to fund those summer learning. So the funding actually came 2 years ago really late. It was mid-May, and we scrambled. It was new, and we scrambled to get that going. And several of you met with Tobias Reed at the time. So he's the treasurer, and we looked at how to fund that. We actually were a catalyst to get the funding last year. But, we've had a change in legislature, a change in governor, a change in, the way the state's investing money around other priorities, housing, homelessness, and other things that I'm sure we're all aware of, dollars being spent, different places. Currently, there's not a fund to support summer learning. We're trying to figure out how we might be able to do some of that, but our grant award last year was around $2 million, and we're about 1% roughly. So if the state makes a $200 million investment, it's about $200 million investment, about $2 million for us, about 1/100th of that. We had about $2.5 million, I think, the first year, about $2 million last year. And it was great, but we currently, they've talked about a $20 million investment, which, for us would be pretty nominal what we could provide. There was a message that went out yesterday from Superintendent Colt Gill to the legislature to petition dollars for that. We are being told right now we're being told right now, figure it out. And so we have parents asking, we've had kids asking, like, what's the plan? It's been 2 years of funding, and currently there is not a plan at the state level to fund it.
That's fine.
Our kids have suffered through COVID. That extra time isn't for everybody. I get that. But if we can't figure out a way, when I say we, the system, figure out a way to offer something, and it takes staffing. I get all that. Figure out a way to get our.
Rod, we will have summer learning at the high school. So we will have.
But I know that, but
also at Winchester Elementary.
okay. Because you know where I'm at with the little ones. We just can't.
Other questions?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if I can explain it the way I'd like to ask the question. When we receive these funds as grants, are there any covenant if we fail to fulfill the grant, we have to pay it back?
That was a no.
Okay, I don't know who wants to take this. Our experience over the last many years, so there are none written. There's always a measure of expectation, but there are no covenants about repayment. There have been, particularly at the federal grant level, and we're seeing more of this recently at the state level. If you follow some, Senate Bill 1045 and some of these things, there's a little bit of a draconian approach maybe to the way this could look. The calculus may be shifting with our current legislature around expectations of how we spend our money. But the federal government is clear that they will be used for this, or you may not qualify for benefit. But there are no covenants currently on the funds we receive that if they're not used appropriately, we have to repay them.
Well, I'm walking down the path that you're explaining, but anytime you put investment, you want a return on it. And in this case, the investment is that they're giving us funds to achieve a certain growth in a certain area that's weak. And if we fail to do that, then we haven't lived up to the grant.
Correct.
And so therefore, the jeopardy is that if we fail, we won't get future money. So it behooves us to do well with this when we get it.
Yeah, the grants all have an element of that.
Yeah.
The grants all have an element of they must be used to do this and have an expectation that they will receive a return on their investment.
Exactly.
So that is, but currently there are no covenants that we would have a repayment.
Okay.
It's a loss of support and funding.
Okay.
The one caveat that I'll give about that is with our IDEA grant, it's not did we fulfill what we said we were going to do? It is a maintenance of effort requirement that within our general fund, we need to spend the same amount on our special education population that we have, in the previous year. You can't drop your spending. They don't want you to, they want you to supplement, not supplant. And so if we fail to meet the maintenance of effort standard, then yes, we would have to pay back IDEA funds.
ask one question that,
Sure.
maybe, maybe Dr. Corden could answer my question. What's as we go through these grants and everything from the past year or two, what's the general psyche of the students at all the different levels, and how the improvement that we may have directly been affected by these grants that we have? Okay, whatever.
Repeat the question, maybe.
Yeah, would you repeat?
Oh, okay. So with these grants that we've received and we're going to receive, the general psyche of the student today at all different levels, what improvements have we seen that we could directly correlate to these grants?
So
And
the question, I think it's a great question. I think I can answer that maybe two ways. There's causation and correlation. And when it comes to determining was it causational or correlational is actually really tricky, particularly when you think about grant funds, because they're augmenting maybe something else that we're working toward. So I would say it's a tricky balance of figuring out, did these grant funds, and with certain grants, we can say, for example, we've fed 600,000 kids over COVID with meals, and I don't know how we correlate, how, if they would have been hungrier, but I will say, so the causational effect is a trickier one to say, was it that made the difference? Was it that teacher who made the difference? Was it the totality of the investment that made the difference? Was it partnering with the parent that made the difference? So that can get tricky. That being said, we do put these grants on a return of investment. So we have outcomes we expect to see. We believe that if we were to invest in, early literacy supports and, have a plan to look at, we use something, we're using a diagnostic and prescriptive around early literacy to help kids become better readers. If we're investing in that, we would say we should see, right now we're seeing 48% of the kids on level. With these funds, we should be able to see 75% of the kids on level next year. We do measure those pieces. So we can say, for example, the intent of the award was to do this, and we need to respond back with all these, whether we've achieved that. And that could be a formative assessment, some kind of diagnosis, or a state assessment, some kind of summative assessment. What is tricky, though, is do they directly impact? Because these grants really don't work in isolation. We don't have a control group. We don't say you get the grant and you don't get the grant in a certain building. So statistically, I think it's a tricky one to really ferret out. I need to use my AP Prob and stats, but it's I think we can see overall improvement, but whether it's specifically because of that program or investment, sometimes it's challenging to tell.
Especially with our high school success and the CTE, the Perkins grant. I mean, the expansion of our CTE programs and the growth of those are directly because of those funds, because we've been able to invest in our automotive and our well-being.
But I will say this, the dollars are helping kids be more involved. We're looking at things like, our kids are entering the workforce prepared. What does our dropout rate look like? So we're looking at those factors. What is tricky, we believe they're helping. We keep getting the grant awards, so people believe also that they're helping, but I don't think we can always specifically say this $1 million grant award did exactly this for a student, but we know that augmenting those we have some outcomes we're all expecting, and we're seeing that trend supporting.
All right. So the superintendent shared with you that we have these funds in this budget that align to resources and with our children's best interest in mind. And I have the privilege of sharing some of that outcome and how we convert that to staffing. So Assistant Superintendent Nee talked about the different funds that allow for us to be able to keep our class sizes low. And we do have targets that we shoot for. So our intermediate, our K1, we shoot for 20 students For our middles, our 2-3, our target is 25 students, and our 4-5, our target is 30 students. And as you can see in this document, I'll explain the document here in a little bit, but we generally err below those targets, and the resources that Assistant Superintendent Nee talked about help us do that. The document in front of you is a little bit hard to read, so I want to explain it to you. On the left-hand side are our elementary schools, all 9 of them, including our virtual school. Then the columns across represent our grade levels. And within those boxes, so let's start at Eastwood and go to kindergarten. On the left-hand side, you'll see 3. That is 3 teachers that represent our kindergarten teachers at Eastwood. Then below that, then to the right side of that box is the total number of students that are registered in kindergarten at Eastwood as of March 24th, 2023. So this is very up-to-date information. The bottom numbers are each individual class at Eastwood. So in kindergarten, you have 3 classes, 2 of 21 and 1 of 19. And then that reads that way across through 5th grade. The other thing I want to bring your attention to is on that first column moving down, we also have special programs that are in each building, and you'll see the numbers there. So if you look at for Grow, for instance, our CNC classroom, that's our complex needs classroom, and our DLC, our developmental learning classroom, it's showing the number of students in each of those special classrooms. So keeping in mind those targets, we staff according to the needs of the building. And you are going to hear me often, not only in this meeting, but in future meetings, that our new recruitment strategy is retaining our current staff. And both superintendents talked about a plethora of ways that we're doing that. And I'm not going to go through all those again, but I do want to highlight that we have full-time music, full-time PE, we have extracurricular activities throughout the district, after-school programs. Specifically at the elementary school, we have robotics, music, and running clubs. Something that I didn't hear, but I'm sorry, we talked about no fees for activities. We've also instituted a no-cut policy in our middle schools, which has skyrocketed the involvement of our student athletes at both Joe Lane and Fremont. So when I go to job fairs, one of the things that I'm most proud of is what this district does to offer all those supports to our students and connect them in different ways. But I also reference our low class sizes. So just because we set those targets, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the whole story. So I want to point out a couple things in this document. So if you'll go to Fullerton and you'll go to 5th grade, you'll notice that there are 59 students in 5th grade. 59 students at a school in a grade level that also has our behavior program is quite a challenge. So how we support anomalies throughout our district is we meet with the building principal, cabinet, offer support. We also include the teachers in those discussions. And in this particular grade level, as well as our 5th grade in Melrose, you'll notice those are higher numbers also. The teachers in the building decided they preferred extra instructional assistant support just to help with the systems and everyday tasks of managing classes that were close to 30. And so we provide that support to help those classes out in lieu of adding another teacher at that grade level. So the flip side of that is also true. So if you'll go down to Sunny Slope, which I think I need to scroll this down a little bit, you'll notice that we have, again, a 5th grade classroom that has lower numbers, but yet we have 3 teachers in that classroom. We've dedicated 3 FTE to that classroom. Again, individual conversations with the principal, and that class has required extra interventions with academic and behavior support, and we've dedicated FTE to help support that. I'd also like to point out in Melrose, you'll see that in second grade and third grade, we have a class of 12 in second grade and a class of 10 in third grade. That is one class. That is called a blend. So don't freak out and say, oh, why do we have a class of 10 students at Melrose? That's not the case. Again, working with that building and with teaching and learning, we felt like the best way to meet the needs of those particular students was to have a blended class. So students in that class are even receiving instruction on standards for both second and third grade. The last thing I want to point out in this document before I'll entertain questions is our virtual school. As many of you are aware that our virtual school meets the needs of a population that we may not have met their needs in our regular brick and mortar schools. You're going to see that the numbers are low, but I want to point out a couple things. So teachers at the virtual school either teach multiple grade levels or they have district responsibilities attached to them. So I'll just quickly go through. Our kindergarten teacher only teaches kindergarten, but has several district responsibilities. Our first grade and second grade, even though it says one teacher, that's the same person. So really it should say 0.5. I'll have to correct that. Also in fourth, fifth, and sixth, you'll notice that each one shows 1 FTE. That is not accurate. There's actually 2 FTE that teaches those 3 grade levels. So they actually take different subjects and teach those. So getting creative. So again, very proud of our class sizes. I would, and I say this at job fairs and with other HR directors that I come in contact with, I would put our class sizes up against any school in the state and for sure any large district in the state. Very proud of where we're at in Roseburg. With that, I'll entertain any questions that you might have about our elementary class sizes.
I know that it's difficult to ask a teacher coming from one building to another, oftentimes get out and go from one grade level to another. But it makes sense to me as a parent, if I were a young parent, and I wasn't one time, that you have 48 kids at Sunny Slope and 3 teachers, but you have 59 kids at Fullerton 4 and you have 57 kids at Melrose. Why make those? Why have those? In other words, if you gave an extra teacher to them, they would only have 4 more students per classroom than Sunny Slope would if they were to have 2 teachers. And so from a parent point of view, if I saw these numbers, and I know how it works, practically speaking, I would say, this is great. All of this is great, except these few key areas that it seems like it just move the person. It would make a difference.
So,
and I know when my daughter, who's my oldest daughter, that's 40 something, she was in a first grade class at Fullerton, and they had way too many kids in the class. And what they did that time is they moved a teacher from 5th grade to first grade in the morning. And that was tough to do in order to split those kids up for reading. And the parents had a big say in what happened. It wasn't the best thing for them to do, but they at least had in the reading classes a lower number. And the same problem exists now. So I don't know if we're really, even though there are only 3 classrooms that might be a problem in, it seems, I'm not saying you're not doing a good job at all. I'm just saying, if I were a parent, I would really have some concern, especially if I was a parent at Fullerton and a parent at Melrose in 5th grade.
thank you for pointing that out. Again, these are numbers. There's more to the story than just the numbers. And I hope I outlined that with each of these anomalies, we do take into account the factors that go along with that grade level.
And I understand the placing of some IAs. However, if the teacher does not know how to use an IA, an extra body in there is not really that helpful. So, are there efforts to the classroom teacher to know how to use an IA? I had IAs when I taught English my first 2 or 3 years of school. But I had a mentor that showed me how to use the IA. And if I hadn't had that, I don't know if I would have been able to do that as effectively as I was able to do, because she had IAs and she showed me how to use them. And your parent, and, you know, you have the public to think about. That wouldn't make a difference to you. The parent, that you have an IA in that classroom. When you could have a teacher that only had 24 students and a teacher that's almost like 20. A little bit more. So,
Nikki, I can speak to that on the 5th grade situation at Fullerton 4. There are 2 experienced teachers that are teaching 5th grade. There were several meetings that took place with Robert and the teachers and the principal, talking about the needs of that grade level, if they needed to add another teacher, or if teachers, the time school had already started and those kiddos were with their teachers. So instead of splitting them and putting them in a new class, they made the decision to have IAs come in to work with them to provide extra support. And there was communication to families, and they were included in what was happening with that. It's the same way with what happened at Sunny Slope and what happened at Melrose. There was a team effort to have decisions on what was best for that particular situation at that school.
I understand. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I love the way this presentation is going, and I like the cover. I've seen these before. When you're trying to keep the class level relatively equal, and you've got 3 situations, 1 in 3rd grade and 2 in 5th grade, where it isn't like that. How do you explain that to somebody? You know,
A question.
This has been a problem, at least in this district, for a long, long time.
I think, first of all, we are using the term IA, and there might be 1 or 2 people that are new, and IA is instructional assistant.
Thank you.
Just in case.
So instructional assistant.
Secondly, I did believe that, now I've heard twice that these particular anomalies or issues there was a team meeting, there was a discussion, and there was a solution that was developed at the site with administration, and obviously the question was, were the parents informed about how that was working?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there a way that we could do it better? Than putting an instructional system in the class? Can we be? I mean, for all of the classrooms that there are in pre-K through 5, this is great. There's 3 of them, but my concern is that it's been this way for a long, long time. Not a reflection on you or anyone, but a reflection on. And it probably happens in other districts.
Right, and I can also speak, Nikki, that at Fullerton and Melrose, so the 2 schools that have the larger ones, we are adding a modular next year, so they have more classroom space, because that's been another issue as well. They didn't have another classroom to add a student.
And that's really good to know for the public.
As we look at this, so the question is then, if an issue like this arose at any school, as we look at this budget, next year's budget, is there then a space in that budget to be able to bring in another teacher if it was the right decision?
Yes. So we are constantly looking at enrollment and class sizes. And I really appreciate the conversation. But again, we look at all the factors, and our North Star is always what's best for the students. And so we continue to act on that. And so I appreciate Assistant Superintendent Nee pointing out that we vet that through a process, and the outcomes are different, but they're based on individual buildings and the students in that classroom's needs.
And I know you can have a classroom. 15 fifth graders and
Numbers don't always tell the whole story.
Other questions?
Got a really quick one.
You bet.
Try to make it quick. So like, I don't want to get too deep into analytics, but over the past, I don't know, since COVID, have these numbers abnormally dropped? And do you anticipate them to abnormally rise again, maybe next year, year after that?
Yeah, so our student enrollment fluctuates constantly, like even month to month, but we monitor these, and if those abnormalities come up, like we were been discussing, then we react to that. So I'll give you a kind of a typical scenario. Kindergarten is one of the hardest grades to predict how many students are going to enroll in kindergarten. So we do in the budget, there's areas if a school all of a sudden has a huge influx. I remember several years ago, I don't know where they all came from, but Hillcrest had like over 100 kindergartners show up. So we were able to adjust quickly and add a teacher to do what you were talking about. So we constantly look at our staffing. If we're in the middle of the year or if we're limited on space, then we take all those factors and try to do what's best to support those kids and support our staff, because again, you're going to hear over and over, our best recruitment right now is retaining our staff. And I think we do a really good job, as you can see with our class sizes. None of these are above our target class sizes. So we do a really good job of staying within our targets. And then I would also challenge that if these targets don't, these class sizes look not advantageous to you, check out some other school districts around the state and see what their class sizes are. We do a great job committing to class size.
Other class size questions?
I'd like to make a comment. In monitoring school sizes, we really can't make any prediction. There has not been an increase in birth rate as a result of COVID, like it did a few years ago when they had a blackout in New York. Okay. Also, as you are keeping track of the demographics of Roseburg, going out Diamond Lake East, that area, they have all those new apartment complexes. It has not resulted in an increase in students at Eastwood. All of a sudden you would think that you'd have all those extra apartments and families, you see a spike in the kids. It didn't happen.
So I think what I was trying to touch on was I know a lot of people in the community that pulled their kids from the school system when COVID had hit, and when we were getting hit with the mandates and all the stuff that was coming down the pipe. So I guess I was more trying to lean towards, was there an abnormal spike somewhere in the past couple of years, and wondering if there might be an inverse spike.
Steve, I mentioned that we were down 550 kids in the pandemic. We had several, I think for a variety of reasons, right? It was the mask mandate. It was people nervous about COVID. Some people, and we were kind of refereeing a really interesting situation, right? Where there's mandates coming down, and we did see the only building that really didn't have a shift. So we had one elementary that was down 100 kids, which is really significant, right? 25%, having 20%. The high school stayed relatively stable. The numbers of the high school really didn't change. We had pretty big fluctuations. Middle school saw a swing of about 100 kids, which is pretty significant. One particular elementary school, Hillcrest, saw a significant shift. That being said, we have seen a migration back, but if we look at year-to-date enrollment, we're about exactly stable in last year at this time. And so it feels like we're norming. So we're not back to our pre-COVID numbers. We're last enrollment 5420 or something, I think was the number. We take a look at that month to month. We're about exactly even as last year. So I think we're normalizing. It's hard to, it's still hard to say. We've had a number of parents that are homeschooling, and I think for some it's been good. For some, we're seeing a trickle where parents are maybe saying, hey, that was a good experience, but maybe they're done, maybe they're going to continue. We don't really know, but I think we feel like it's kind of norming out right now. But yeah, we're dealing with some pretty severe spikes. I've never seen that in my career where it was really severe. And we had enrollment projections that really we make up. We thought we'd have everyone come back. Not everybody came back. We're still not sure where some kids went, to be really honest with you. We knocked doors, we made calls, and some people just went off the grid. We're not sure where they went. And some decided they were going to do school a different way, and that's their choice. But we're actually not sure where some of our kids went, actually. So, but we feel like we're norming. I think we're last time of the projections and our current enrollment a year ago, we were 2 kids off from a year ago at this point. So it feels like it's a kind of moment. Hopefully that helps. A lot of help.
All right.
Again, I'm hoping that you guys will set a meeting for the next time. Give you guys some time to go home and read the budget document as much as you want to. Probably have some special presentations next time from Melissa on Emerging K and Michelle for the Ed Center that are focused a little more on the general fund. So I thought we'd just finish up tonight, use some time that we have left and go over some of the other funds that aren't quite as intricate as the general fund. Starting on page 311. I do very much. They're really brief. I don't have copies for people. 311 is our general obligation debt service fund. And I just put in a brief description of what a general obligation bond is. This is the levy that we are asking for here in May. That's called a general obligation bond. Generation GO bonds, we also refer to them as a GO bond, are accrued, secured, glasses, are secured by the full faith and credit and taxing power of the issuer. The issuer pledges unconditionally to pay the interest and principal on the debt as it matures. And I would just offer this up as a contrast. We also have pension obligation bonds, which are not a voter approved bond. So it's a little bit different. Districts that have a bond levy on the May ballot need to include the proceeds and anticipated debt service requirements in the following fiscal year. So you're going to see both the debt service, which you see here. This is the anticipated, what we need to bring in and expenditures to pay the first year of the obligation bond. And you'll see in the major maintenance funds where the proceeds are coming from when the bonds are sold. If the bond does not pass, the school board can remove the budget for those items and they will not appropriate those funds. Even if they're left in the budget, we would be able to spend the money. We don't have it. And the 22-23 proposed column that you see here on page 311, that is the estimated debt that will need to be paid for the 2023 levy. The history that you see here are the last payments from the last capital improvements GO bond that the district did. So you see here on page 311, the revenue sources coming in. And as you see with the funds going out, those funds match. And that's the expenditures, the redemption of principal.
And probably worth noting that the previous bonds that was built essentially did several things in the district, but most of the high school addition to the new man in the road has been paid off.
Correct, in December of 2021. I'd like to turn your attention then to page 317, and I'll just note that this fund was used to service a full faith and credit obligation that the district had. We actually had QZAB bonds and an outright loan. Those have been since paid off, so they're history only. On page 323, we can see the results of our PERS, well, part of the results of our PERS obligation fund. This fund reflects the revenue and expenditures related to the PERS bonded debt. The revenue in this fund is generated by charging a percentage out across all payroll in the district. We currently charge out 15.35% across all payroll lines, and we transfer them here to this fund 302, and that gives us the revenue, if you will, then to pay that year's debt on those pension obligation bonds.
What would that percentage be? 15 what?
15.35.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of additional information from last week's work session. Right now, the Roseburg School District for the 23-24 year, the tier 1, tier 2 employer rate, that is what one of two things that we pay into the fund on behalf of an employee. For those of us who are in tier 1, tier 2, the employer rate is 1.38%. That's what the district will pay out on our salary directly to PERS. The OPSERP rate, if you've been hired after 2003, you're an OPSERP or tier 3, we're not paying anything in as the employer rate for those employees because we have that money that we sent there with those pension obligation bonds. If we had not done We've done three. We have three side accounts, they call it. In the early 2000s, we issued pension obligation bonds. We did a cash transfer to PERS in order to get a 25% match from the state. Did that. Thank you. And then we did our 2021 PERS obligation bond issuance. Had we not done those three, set up those three side accounts, our tier 1, tier 2 employer rate would be 27.87%, and our OPSERP rate would be 25.03. So although we're paying out 15%, so we pay out 15%, sorry, we charge out 15% to pay the debt holders. So we're paying 15.35% on our OPSERP members when we would have been paying 25.03. The rate is a little bit higher for tier 1, tier 2. It's a little less than 17%, but that's as opposed to 27.87%. So our budget includes about $43 million in salaries and wages. If you consider that maybe half is tier 1, tier 2, and half is OPSERP, after the expense of the pension obligation bonds, the district is saving about $4.4 million in next year's budget. We just would have sent that to PERS. So it's been a good thing. So here's where you see where we make our PERS pension bond payments from. You guys have any questions? Those are, I hope, fairly straightforward. You guys have any questions about the 300 debt service group? Not that you can't ask questions at our next meeting, but we're just discussing them now. All righty. If you guys would turn to page 329. This is the 400 funds are our major capital improvement funds. They serve to both set aside funds for the future and to serve some of them as if we have a major project going on right now. The first one you see is with our seismic grant. And actually, if you turn to page 331, you'll see quite a large increase in our seismic grant anticipated expenditures. Our grants that we get for our seismic rehabilitation, the revenue goes into this fund and we expend directly from this fund to make those improvements. And right now we're juggling between 2 and 3. This summer, we will do a $1.2 million renovation at Joe Lane in the cafeteria. We also will be anticipating starting our Eastwood. We have a $2.5 million grant for Eastwood to rehabilitate facilities there. And we were recently notified of a $2.5 million, that's the max grant, for Winchester Elementary School. Don't know if we can start that in summer of 24. It may be summer of 25, but we threw some appropriation in here in case we needed to start with design fees and those types of things. So just for interest's sake, we actually have received, in my time here, before I got here, we also had a $1.5 million seismic rehabilitation grant for the Commons. And so all of those seismic grants together, including that one, is over $17 million that we brought in for our school district. And when we do those, a lot of times, like if you've been in the gym at Fremont recently, not only did we rehab that in the boys' locker room for seismic stability, we were also able to replace the HVAC system. Some of this was a district expense, but we added and it was the right time. We replaced the floor of that gym and did quite a bit of painting, updating. The gym really looks quite beautiful. So I'm kind of proud when we can, seismic rehab is not always the most glamorous thing until you can make it look a little nicer too.
Does the seismic rehabilitation count toward our goal of safety and security?
Hands down.
Okay.
Hands down. The first few grants that we received were what they call life safety. In other words, it's kind of a brutal way to say it, but that means you're going to live through the initial shake if you're in that building. The walls are designed to then break outward and leaving the roof structure not collapsing. There's different walls require different enhancement. They now say the grants are now $2.5 million max rather than the 1.5, and we are to upgrade not only to life safety standards, but immediate occupancy. So they're focusing on our large spaces, our multi-purpose rooms, our gymnasiums. And then, so after the initial shaking, it is actually designed to be used as an emergency shelter afterwards. So,
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Remember, you're on board, but I will tell you, we hadn't got that grant, had that gym done at Roseburg High School, very slow yet.
Oh,
let it collapse.
yeah,
Means
I agree. Yeah.
let it collapse. We leave that in a. And that project turned out beautiful.
I'll just mention too, and I think it's probably important for patrons to know this is, although this is a benefit directly to students, it's really a benefit indirectly to the community. Because, you know, in the event of a Cascadia type event here, we don't have many facilities that are rated for immediate occupancy in a major earthquake. And so I just kudos business department, and then, you know, we're continually writing these grants, trying to get awards, but they're really becoming important community projects. This is where, if we plan with EMS and fire and rescue and first responders, these are the places that the Red Cross will come. This is the place that we will feed people in the event of an emergency. And so they do become great for our, you know, we have aging infrastructure, but it's nice for the community. The overall community benefit is also notable.
Okay.
Great. Page 335 is our next major maintenance fund. We call it our Senate Bill 1149 fund. This fund is funded by a public purpose charge assessed on all Portland PG&E and Pacific Power invoices. So if you are a Pacific Power member, you'll see a public purchase charge on your power bill, and that goes to schools to help us fund energy efficiency projects. They have to be approved by the Oregon Department of Energy. And so this fund reflects the receipts in, and we do budget to expend them. We've been able to do some of our energy efficiency projects using other funding this year. Some of our COVID funds have gone for, like, the HVAC at the gym at Fremont. So we've not had to touch these funds, but they're here now for us to do our next energy efficiency project. The next one, oh yeah, sorry.
So when I look at page 335, resources report, 2023-2024. We're expecting to receive $138,000. And we've already got $300,000 there, so we got $438 to spend. Is that what that says?
Yes, that is what that says.
And then page 337, that tells me that we're planning to spend. Not to spend all that money, the $438.
Yes.
You have to kind of hold my hand to lead me through the budget.
Yes, we do plan to spend. That doesn't mean that we necessarily will, but this give us that appropriation. We may come along and see with one of our seismic grants again. We might want to renovate and, you know, redo that HVAC system and not take those funds from a different source. It's great to have a little bit extra money in your pocket, because you can't, you know, if you only had 50,000 there, you probably can't fund a whole lot with just that.
It has been, the ending fund balance has been an interesting adventure through the years.
Yes. On page 341, we have a fairly new fund. It's 40, kind of the previous slide, sorry, 402. Thanks. Called this the RHS parking fund. So students at RHS pay to park. There's always not enough parking. That money used to be receipted into our general fund and just used for general operating expenditures. So we began to tuck it aside someday, because we might either need to replace a parking lot or we would like to add one. Realize it's a little less than 20,000 a year, but now we're actually using the resources. We're aligning the resources with the expenditures. So, you know, we're getting up there, $50,000 in there now. So that's our RHS parking lot fund. Along the same line, on page 349, 349 is fund 403. This is a brand new fund. You can remember a few years ago when we needed to replace the artificial turf at the high school. Well, we had definitely open, but buried within our major maintenance fund, our 404 fund, we had sort of earmarked part of those monies directly to replace that turf for a few years. This is now pulling that out and maybe saving more over a longer period of time. So we've got the money to go ahead and replace the artificial turf when it wears out. We have a few more years to go on our football field. Returfing the field easily be $700,000. And now with us adding an additional turfed athletic field, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about later. It's a softball field, mostly a softball field, but it is an athletic field. It can be used for other purposes. It's now time for the district to begin to save to be able to replace those surfaces when they wear out. Otherwise, we could devastate our major maintenance fund in 1 year just doing that. So we don't want to do that. And we get to our 404 fund. Our 404 fund page on page 353 is our major capital improvement fund. It's one we've had forever. Generally speaking, when we have a big project that we're going to do, we use these funds. If we're going to put security cameras in an entire building, that was going to be charged to this fund. Within our general fund, we also have maintenance funds, but that's for the general day-to-day maintenance. It's where our maintenance staff are paid out of. And it does include supplies for things when teachers want new cubbies built, or they want, other day-to-day, we need plumbing repairs. Those supplies and those people are charged within the general fund. This is a planned large expenditure. You heard me talking about some of the expenditures we made with the Fremont seismic rehabilitation. The excess over the grant came from this major maintenance fund, allowed us to make some of those projects. Had this fund for many years, building up a bit of a balance because we know we have several seismic projects coming into play. And this will also, when we pass our bond, this also can be a supplement to some of those projects. Capital projects fund. And the last one I want to talk about tonight is the 405, the capital projects fund. This fund will be used after the passage of the May 23 bond levy request. The proceeds of the bond sale and the awesome matching funds will be deposited here, and all capital outlay projects funded with the bond will be expensed here. So we have a $75.5 million bond levy request. And if that is passed, then the district will receive a $5.8 million matching grant from the Oregon Department of Education. And they call it the Awesome Grant. So that'll help us complete those projects. Does anybody have any questions about anything I've talked about tonight? Our major projects fund in general? What the district spends its maintenance monies on?
I appreciate that's a good review because it's all the other expenses, a lot of the other part of the school district's budget. Usually the general fund gets the greatest attention.
Keith,
Yes.
So the land area around the high school that the high school owns that currently have rental homes and that type of thing. And obviously there's some space where the new softball complex. First of all, you mentioned that what other things will that possibly be used for? And then do we have a long-term strategy plan for all of that area over the next, 5, 10, 15 years?
Do you want me to? So the district, there's approximately 13 acres back there behind the high school. The district owns all but 3 of the properties. The intent, as I've always been told, is that was going to be a sports / perhaps agriculture area. Back in 2004, the board did commission a study and have 4 or 5 different sample plans for the entire parcel. We of course can't address that at this time because we don't own all of those properties. Why we're addressing one at this time? Let Superintendent Gordon talk about that.
Yeah, so we purchased last year 5 properties, mostly on Selmar Court. We do own 20 of the 23 properties behind the high school. One of the properties we currently own is a transition house, and that house is going to be, it's going to be demo, I guess, but we're going to make sure Heartwood or somebody comes and gets what they need, and that will be moved. And so we did do some updates. There was like Cheryl said, there was a study. The board commission, we do have those documents. We've re-looked at how to use some of that space back there. I think it's going to be, it could be some time before we eventually develop that property, but the intent is to have that. I mean, our current field, we say often, is the largest classroom in the entire district. We do have a scarcity with turf fields in our community. There's only one. It is Oregon. It's hard to play. Drive by Stewart Park, and I mean, they made obviously an upgrade at Legion Field, but the tarp's been out on the softball field nearly every day I've been around there. So the idea is to provide more access for kids in the community, and that space is what's really been targeted by the board to develop that. In terms of the field itself, I mean, I'll just mention, so everybody's aware here, that we're, I think, excited to be able to, the opportunity to invest in a field behind the school for softball. But to be very frank, that field comes as a result of a Title IX complaint. There was a complaint, to make a long story short, to file the complaint against the school district. We don't own Legion Field, we rent from the city. But when the turf went at Legion Field for baseball, and our baseball players are one of several users that use that, there was a complaint that there was an inequity in Title IX was passed in '79, it's federal legislation, and says that there can't be discrimination of gender relative to a variety of things, including, facility use. We tried to help the investigators realize it wasn't our property. We didn't feel, we didn't fundraise for the new turf at Legion, although grateful our kids could play on that field, our baseball kids. Essentially the complaint was upheld, and we're moving forward with a conciliation agreement with the complaint to find a way to do that. The project is moving forward. We're working collaboratively with the complainant, but it is moving forward as a result of the Title IX complaint. So the funding for that has been set aside out of the board set aside $500,000 a year to take care of that funding. We are hoping to be moving dirt. We are moving dirt currently, but doing the site work and the field installation, we're hoping this summer, moving through a conditional use permit process at this point.
I'm not sure what's actually in the bond, what's being asked for the bond, but if the bond would fail, what are the plans as far as money is concerned with the third price?
I'm happy to talk about that as well. So the bond really has three major aspects to it. The first one is specific investments in security. It goes without saying that unfortunately we still see terrible things happening in a variety of places, including schools with kids. And statistically, we'll see more kids shot in a school by the time the school bond is voted on. It's an unfortunate tragedy we see. And so one is a specific investment in securing school buildings so that we can ensure when we take students into our buildings, we can at a minimum get them home as good as they were left with us. That's number one. The second one is about health and safety district-wide. So there are major systems that need a lot of work, plumbing, electrical systems, roofs that need to be done, as well as air quality issues. And we had to close school last year. We're dealing with more smoke in our community, and so the air quality issues are something we address. And that'd be heating and air conditioning both. That would be all schools district-wide. And the third one is the heritage, the new main investment. And that is, will do several things for us in terms of workforce development center and some of those things. If the bond is not successful, we will be unable to move forward with a rebuild of these buildings and also the other investments. So relative to the heritage, if it's not successful, we'll probably need to work in a situation like we're currently in. We currently have modulars, as you know, we've moved a variety of classes to the commons. We do have students still every day in the heritage. It's our weight training facility. And so we have students in there 6 periods a day for weight training, 7 for weight training, including probably some before and after school activities for lifting. And it would be, our structure would be to continue using it as is in this current year long term. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, buildings started in 1924, finished in 1926. Been a great building, and so, but the board has had a keen interest on investing in a new building.
Thank you, Cheryl. And are there any other questions for staff? Yes.
One more question. Have we done an assessment of the value of our properties are vacant properties such as, we have the property out in Charter Oaks, we have the property out by the college. Again, a sort of a long-term 5, 10, 15-year. Do we really need those properties? One, do we have a strategy for them? What we might anticipate the need could be down the road.
Yeah, I'm happy to, those really become board decisions and, that's in consultation with the board. It's really a question the board will need to answer, the board actions when it comes to those, the board has made some really smart investments. I'm curious to see what happens in the short, medium term in terms of, if we're gonna see some land use changes and potentially new building in our community. There's room some of that out in the Charter Oak area. It's been rumored for many, many years. But we have talked with the board last year about our current properties, and we've had conversations in public meetings about our current, where we sit for current properties. And I think it's likely to be a discussion, post bond in terms of what, how successful the bond is and what we do to take care of these needed investments. That will of course involve the board as the primary drivers in that conversation.
It's probably fine. It's been a few years for us to get what they're all worth. So that's probably a time to do that. We had a study. On the board. Yeah, you were when we passed the last bond, right? 2000.
Yeah.
And I can remember Keith and I going out with Mr. Jackson. Remember that meeting?
I do.
Because he was not happy with attorneys. And I've told this story. We sat down and he offered us a drink, but of course we didn't take it because we were both on work, and we worked out the agreement for that property for a possible second high school, which I think it'd be great tied in with UCC. But the study that was done said that at this time, we have 9,000 kids in our school district. I never believed that. I don't know if Keith did. Maybe, I don't know.
Not that Bible.
No, and so it's probably time. And I also wanted to say about all the building going out Van Wyck Boulevard. Most of that's in the Glide School District. You get Sunshine Park further, that's Glide. So that's why we're not seeing a big increase. But anyway, I think that's a good question, Tom.
I would like to make a comment with regards to our economy and our nation and our counties particularly. I take it as a very positive insight that our major employer in this community is going to put $700 million in the next 5 years, Roseburg Forest Products. When you bring that type of an economy, wood products, where at one time wood products created, every dollar in wood products created $8 in this county of yeast money. When those employees come, they're going to bring children. We as a community need to be prepared to have our school district meet the needs of those employees, or we are selling ourselves short. Okay, so we need to just gear up the picture and say it's coming. Let's take care of it. 2016, RFP moved their head office to Springfield, and we saw some drop. Now they're bringing all of this manufacturing job back to our backyard. Okay, D.R. Johnson Lumber did the same thing. Herbert Lumber did the same thing. Keller Lumber did the same thing. And I'm in the lumber industry, and I see things like now I'm reading that Doug fir trees are dying at a rate of 30%. You can't even go cut them. So it's going to get even worse, but before it gets better. But my bottom line thought process is this: we as a budget committee, we as a community must prepare ourselves for the future, and it's sitting right on our doorsteps right now. The more positive we are to our community, that we're ready to provide for our employees and our citizens a quality building, a quality education that is top notch, we're going to be ahead of the game. Let's get on board and get it done.
That's another question about the bond and the budget book. I understand on page 359, it shows among our resources, $75 million, which is what we would be receiving if the bond passes. We presumably getting out of November or something like the bonds are sold. And then on page 361, it shows as requirements, $81 million for building acquisition, construction and improvement. That would be taking the bond proceeds to distribute out into other funds to finance the bond projects. But are those funds reflected in the rest of this?
Yeah.
Budget? Okay.
The funds are all reflected here and the expenditures made will be charged here.
Okay. I'll nod my head and say, okay, I tend to understand. I've done that through school for a long time.
Easily tracked, very specific.
School. It counts us a $1 million bill. Expenditure will show up right.
It'll show up on page 361. Okay.
Not so much people for this. If you'd like it red or green.
I've seen those things that come out in red. When you photocopy, you can't tell the colors. That's why you have a copy.
Anything else? Any other questions this evening? We have scheduled a second meeting. I think it's 2 weeks from tonight, May 3rd, 6 p.m. here. If everybody's aware and that works, I think it's 2 weeks from tonight. Again, mentioning that if you have questions, if you go through the budget, have questions, call staff, they'll respond. They'll also keep us, all of the members, advised of what those questions are because they're usually helpful. Anything else?
We don't get, where's all
Well, with that, is there a motion to recess? Motion and second? Second. All right. Meeting adjourned.